Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to Critical Q&A. Yep, looks like we're all good. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our live stream. I'm here to answer your questions. Again, I'm going to try to remind myself to slow down. I always get, even after all these years, we're live. And I feel like I need to fill all of this airspace with sound. And like an old radio DJ and or a modern one. Anyway, hey, so I'm going to try to bring it down again. Anyway, let's go ahead and get the chat. Let's get the Q&A box going here. Start a Q&A. Please put your questions here under this comment box. Okay, let's try that. Start Q&A. Excellent. I hope you guys have had a good morning today. Oh, let's switch over to our host and chat screen so I can see your chat up on the screen, while I also can see the questions that are coming in the little chat box, so the little window I've got set up here for that. And let's move this thing over so it's not quite so far away. I got this little touch screen thing here so I could try to facilitate this and make it a little faster and easier for everybody. Anyway, so I just wanted to throw a couple ideas out there this morning. I've been feeling a little on edge, a little sensitive this morning, maybe. Maybe I spent a little bit too much time on Twitter today. I love it when, I just want to say this part, and I know that I'll just say that it's interesting to me the amount of privilege that we give ourselves when it comes to policing other people sometimes. It's really interesting. It is, right? Because you go from wanting to stop abuse or wanting to stop harm to becoming a kind of social police officer. This can happen. And I've seen this happen. I've done it myself. People in cults, of course, have a very thought policing, social police kind of hat that they wear within the cult. And this carries on, and other people who are never in a cult can become part of a group that has really strong or extreme ideas about harm or hurting or what it is that causes harm. And when that includes words, things get really dangerous really fast, because words represent ideas. And if you start shutting down words, you're shutting down ideas. And some ideas need to be shut down. But the way it gets policed is you simply cannot say this word. Period. End of story. This word is verboten. And once that happens, you have to be very, very careful. It's not that it's wrong to shut down certain words in certain contexts. We do it all the time. But you have to be careful. And there are people who are not careful about this. And so they end up turning away allies, people who could actually help them become enemies to them because of this. And this happens on social media all the time. I know I'm not unique in this. I just ran into another example of it this morning, and it really irked me because I was like, wow, I agree with this person. I put out some tweet against this other person who was being very silly and very stupid, if I might say so. And the person I was agreeing with decided that because I described this particular individual as a moron, which is a word that I use and I don't find offensive, I find it to be just a word to describe, when you don't have your thinking hat on. And and I decided, and somebody decided to word police me about that. So it was just on my mind because I'm not going to be word policed by anybody, and I realized that I did that too. Fell into that I lived in that headspace for many, many years as to, taking it upon myself to go tell other people what they can and can't say in the course of their life. And it's probably not a good idea to do that. I think there's probably better ways for us to engage with each other than simply say, well, that word is not okay, and you can't use it, and if you continue to use it, then you are an evil person. I don't know. I'm reevaluating that whole concept, I think. Anyway, let's get on with your questions now. I just had to rant about that. I just had to. So I did. Now, rant over. Let's, thank you for attending my TED Talk. Let's get on with your questions now. Let's see. Boom. X-Cyan starts us off today. I thoroughly enjoyed the podcast you posted yesterday with Melanie Trecek-King. Me too, thank you. She sounded like she had some poignant self-discovery while talking to you. More to come. I thought so too, and I thought that was a really, really fun and interesting and opening, mind-opening kind of discussion for both of us. And I definitely will have Melanie back on my channel. She's willing to come back, and I'm sure she is. We've been in touch since. I've been telling her the podcast was great. It was so fun to have you on, and I can't wait to have her back. I find her field of study, of course, to be very, very interesting. If you all haven't checked out my podcasts with her, there was this recent one where we got to talk in studio this last week. But I've done earlier shows with her, and she has always been nothing but a pleasure and joy to talk to. She is one of the most upbeat and fun people to talk to about education and critical thinking and what it encompasses. And I really enjoyed the fact that we have had parallel journeys in learning about the fact that emotions and humility and emotional needs and these kinds of things are just as much a component of critical thinking if we're gonna talk about rational, good, improved thinking, or using your mind as as your best weapon and really honing it. Then you can't separate out the idea that we have emotions and that emotions very, very heavily influence our thinking. And she's come to the exact same conclusions as I have on different routes, right? I think everybody who dives into this runs into this challenge at some point, that we have arbitrarily designated, this idea of thinking, of thoughts, and then emotions as these different things. And because we frame them that way, and we think about emotions as volatile and reactionary and hard to manage, and they are, we sort of oppose them with our ideas of critical thinking or rational, Mr. Spock, logical, skeptical thinking. And I don't know, those lines blur a little bit for me these days. And they used to be a lot more clearly delineated. And now I see, the way these things interact with each other. If we're going to say that they're different things, then they certainly work together an awful lot more than I think we would be, than we're comfortable with or happy with. I think we wish we could be a little bit more logical, but those emotions are the only thing that makes life worth living. So, there's that little thing too. All right. Anyway, enough babbling about that. Let's move on here. Young Matador asks, hey, Chris, I hardly, most of the time I don't even look at these things. I just pop them up here. So I hope you guys are being good in the questions box. Hey, Chris, do you think it's correct to criticize the overuse of the term cult, especially in tabloids? Some new religious figures want freedom for any religious group. It's tricky to balance. Absolutely. Great question. Thank you for asking me this. Cult is a loaded term and a very, very troublesome one for a lot of reasons, mostly having to do with propaganda. And if you watched the show on Friday about, propaganda, I still have all the papers from that DOJ. This is that DOJ indictment of the Russian propaganda operation on social media that was exposed this week. If y'all didn't watch the show on Friday, I hope you'll check it out. We got to go into that, and I believe that the word cult has had a similar treatment, which is why I bring it up. It's directly the same thing. Instead of the Russians paying compromised company owners who manipulate content creators on YouTube to produce right-wing extremist anti-American content, instead of that being the operation, cults will fund or pay or compromise academics, media figures, and other thought leaders, and they've been doing this for decades to muddy the waters and make cult a controversial word and make the topic of cult control, brainwashing, thought reform, mind control. All of these terms have been muddied beyond recognition by trolls and by campaigns engaged in by cults. A lot of money has been spent on this, and I can't sit here. See, I say that knowing certain things, but not being able to break down for you all the specifics of who was paid what when. I don't have that breakdown for you. These are not transparent transactions. They don't happen in the light. They happen in the dark. They happen behind closed doors. They happen in smoke-filled rooms, literally. They happen in the halls of academia where there are no cameras. Deals are made, money is exchanged, grant money is given, research money is given, other, vacations and perks and benefits, all the things that you hear lobbyists do to government officials, all the things that you hear the Russians do or other foreign actors do to compromise patriotic citizens, right? Get them to turn on their country. We've discussed the different things that motivate people: money, ideology, thought reform, right? Romance, sex. These are all the buttons that people have that get them to do what they do. And academics and reporters and people in the ex-cult space, or people who are adjacent to it, like religious studies scholars or religious studies scholars or sociologists, right? And psychologists. These are people who are adjacent to this space, and every one of them are compromisable. They're human beings, and they have their own ideas, and a lot of the ideas that drive the cult apologists have to do with freedom of religion. Well, you're fighting freedom of religion. You're threatening people's freedom of religion, you ex-cult members, you activists, because you're decrying a religion, and people should be able to believe whatever they want. And this argument is itself completely disingenuous and completely propagandized in order to straw man us ex-cult members who are fighting abuse. And they frame it. They don't acknowledge the abuse, and they reframe it so that they make it out that we are fighting religion or the freedom to believe. And this is one of the reasons why militant atheists hurt our cause, and why I rail against extremism in the secular world as much as I do in the theist world. Because and all of what I'm saying is relevant to answering your question, Matador, because this is how the word cult has been made controversial. It's just a word. It's a shortening of culture, and it was originally used in a negative or pejorative sense by cultists, by people we would call cultists now, fundamental Christians. At the beginning of the 19th century, had a very big problem on their hands, because spiritualism and mysticism and what we now think of as New Age philosophy, it's not new at all. This was dominating social circles and was very much the fad of the day, you could say, and it went on for quite some time. This is Madame Blavatsky's influence. This is when, witchcraft and the occult and seances and automatic writing and channeling, and this idea of channeling spirit, old spirits and things. This was very, very popular in the early 1900s, and Christianity was on the decline, and this was a post-Enlightenment problem. And so the Christians, the fundamentalist Christians, were really put out by this, the same way the evangelicals are now. And they put together books, and they called these books the fundamentals of Christianity. And they called people who didn't practice their version of fundamental Christianity cultists. And this is how it started. At least according to all the history I've read, this is the story of it. And so it's really funny to me, right, that that's how it started. And all through the 1900s and into the 2000s here, there have been many, many, many cults, destructive cults, groups that are high control, that use thought reform, that do all the things we talk about. There have been hundreds, thousands of these things that have sprung up and gone around in different parts of the world. And some of them have grown into million-member groups. And when they start having that kind of money being thrown around, millions and millions of dollars, and real estate and power brokers, you know, they start dealing with government officials and things like this. These are the kind of people who don't appreciate being called cultists, even though they are. And so they hire the academics, they hire PR firms, they hire media relations specialists, and they get reporters and journalists on their payroll, and they get academics on their payroll, and they get lawyers on their payroll, and they start to engage in the campaign of muddying the waters. And that's how all of this happens. That's the world that we really do live in. And you guys, probably most of you don't think about it very much, but the amount of money and influence that is being peddled out there and being pushed around out there by cults alone, let's not even talk about governments, just the cults. Okay, not even the companies, not even corporations, just the cults. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars expended just in the last many decades by these groups to make all of us ex-members, and any of us in the academic world or in the journalism world, the media world, to shut them down and make them not say or do anything to stop their cons, their deceitful con jobs from continuing. That's how it works. And a lot of money goes into this, okay, as I've said. So it's actually not tricky to balance at all if you're clear-headed about what a religion is versus what an abusive high-control group is. And there are chasms of difference. And it really doesn't help any of us when folks out there, like some of you who may be watching this at this point or some point in the future. I don't think my existing audience does this at all. But some of you who are watching this in the future might be the kind of people who go, there is no difference between religion and cults. You're only helping the cults when you say crap like that. It really doesn't help us in the ex-cult space when you say stuff like that, because there are differences. There are benign groups with supernatural beliefs, and they are not the same as Scientology. They don't abuse children. They don't beat on their members. They don't drive them to financial ruin. There are thousands of such groups. Peaceful. You know, they might get into conflict with each other. They might have problems and issues, but they're not high control groups that sexually abuse their children or each other, right? They don't do that. And they don't deserve to be put in the same basket as Scientology and the Moonies. So this is a really kind of, for me, from my position in the work that I do, you know, this is an important point. And I know that me saying this isn't going to stop a single person out there from doing this, but I need to say it anyway, because it doesn't help. There is no tricky balance here if you're clear in your head about what these terms and ideas are. Okay, so all the people who have a very vested interest in making it seem unclear and difficult, they're the ones who are working for the cults, right? That's where all that comes from. So that's my take on it, at least. And I am more than happy to have that discussion with anybody who thinks that cult is a difficult, hard, you know, tricky word, and we really can't be sure what you mean when you say it's a cult. Yeah, we can. We have a very, very specific set of characteristics. And if a group is meeting the majority of those characteristics, guess what? It's a harmful group that abuses people, because one of the characteristics is it abuses people, right? It's not hard to figure this out. But people who make it seem like it is, yeah, all right, you get the point. All right, let's carry on. Let me take a. This is why I have a soda with a top on it now and a straw, because I knock it over and it doesn't make a mess here. Thank goodness. That would be bad. Oh. Okay. Yeah, make sure you get your questions in the question box. I definitely want to answer them. Yeah. Good comment, Fluffy, about the evangelicists. All right, let's carry on here. X-Cyan asks, what is black Dianetics? Okay, this is a term L. Ron Hubbard came up with in 1951 time period, early Dianetics days, to describe the misuse or abuse of Dianetics for harmful purposes. This was more propaganda from L. Ron Hubbard. It's a particular propaganda technique. I'll call it the opposite world technique. I don't know what it's called, but it's where you pretend you have something harmful. Dianetics is a harmful, mentally abusive practice. It is a practice of covert hypnotism with pre and post hypnotic suggestion, and it is done in an authoritarian way where you are forced to engage in the process until the operator, the auditor, says you're done. You don't have any say in it. This is unethical therapeutic practice in any metric, on any metric you want to use. You do not control people that way unless you have an insane person who cannot control themselves on your hands, who has to be involuntarily committed to a facility, and then the last thing you're going to do with them is Dianetics. So, to lock people up and not let them out of the room and control them the way Dianetics does is not therapy, and it's not helpful. That being said, L. Ron Hubbard decided that he would make it appear that it was a good, useful, therapy practice. A psychotherapy is how it was originally positioned, by inventing black Dianetics, a supposed use of Dianetic technique, which would be overtly harmful and destructive, like using the idea or theory of engrams in order to implant engrams in people and control them. If you know that you can knock somebody over the head and knock them out, or give them certain drugs or sodium pentothal, something like that, and knock them out, and then implant commands in them, basically hypnotic commands, right? You would use, this sort of narco-hypnotic technique. And this has been done. People do this. Doesn't work that good. But Hubbard's assertion was if you knew Dianetics, then you knew that you knock them out, you hit them or beat on them so as to impose the command you're installing with pain, just to make sure that you have a real engram on your hands. That's what an engram is, a moment of pain and unconsciousness. And then it will, if you implant the right words in the right way, apparently, then later on it could somehow re-stimulate, especially if you purposefully install re-stimulators, like, you hit the guy over the head with a hammer, you drug him, and then you tell him every single time, pink feathers, hurt or something, right? And when I hurt, I want to go steal things, or I want to go steal from Albertsons. Maybe you have some operation on your mind where you want this guy to go steal from Albertsons. I'm just making this up right now. So you're gonna do all this stuff, give him an engram, and then associate it with a pink feather, which is a kind of an odd thing, not common, right? You're not going to run around and see pink feathers everywhere you go, and then connect this to the painful incident, and then give him a command. Pink feathers make me want to steal things, right? And this would be using Dianetics abusively. Yeah, it's an imaginary thing. Nobody ever did this, and Hubbard created it. The propaganda use of it is that it reinforces the goodness of what you're talking about when you contrast it with something bad. right? Automatically in people's minds, they create the binary and position the Dianetics as the good stuff, right? There's white Dianetics, the good Dianetics. Okay. All right. I do not know what your name is, but here's your if I write my own book as a way of figuring out what I really believe after leaving a cult to get the cult beliefs out of my head, would there be a danger I just create my own cult or my own holy book? Sure. I mean, there's always a danger of that, but the real danger of you starting a cult or starting your own holy book is what you do with it after people respond and give you feedback, right? So the real danger is you. Now, if you get people contacting you and saying, let's say you write this book and you say, I love purple feathers, and you're sorting out your beliefs, right? And people agree with you. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you then take that and start creating, ways to monetize it unethically, that would be kind of cult leaderish of you, wouldn't it? Right? You don't want to do that. But if people just agree with you, there's no harm in that. As far as starting a religion, I guess it would depend on the ideas, right? But yeah, I don't think there would be too much danger, though. Because you're the one who's in the driver's seat when it comes to whether it's going to turn into a cult or not. Destructive cult. Okay, Red Pill, this time I see you and we are answering your questions. Do you like the Fast and Furious films? Do Scientologists think vaccines are good or a conspiracy? Do you like to eat catfish? What are some of the worst alternative medicine scams? I like the way that there's one and this time two serious questions baked in with these other ones. So here's the Red Pill medley this week. No, I do not like the Fast and Furious films. I absolutely think that they are trash and a waste of everyone's time. They've certainly employed an awful lot of people and paid off a lot of mortgages. Those films have, but otherwise, I don't really enjoy them at all. They're not I'm not the demographic for them. Do Scientologists think vaccines are good or a conspiracy? Well, it depends on the Scientologist you speak with. There are many, many, many Scientologists. Please know that there are many Scientologists who absolutely are pro-science, pro-vaccine, don't have a problem with it, and go take their kids and get their vaccines and do their thing, and it's not a problem. There are also many Scientologists, unfortunately, who are anti-vax and believe in the anti-establishment, anti-medicine. It's all bad. It's all a conspiracy to either deprive us of cures, overcharge us for everything, or actually hurt us in some way, right? You see conspiracy theories around all three of those themes or ideas. So Scientologists there's a lot of anti-vax Scientologists. There's a lot of Scientologists who were not in agreement with the lockdowns or the vaccines or medicine in general. They refer to their body as a meat body or a piece of meat. They don't really respect the body for the biological machine that it is. They feel, because of Scientology beliefs, that their spiritual thinking is what determines the health and course of their body, not whether they eat right or sleep or take care of themselves or exercise or anything like that. Those are not necessary things, or those are not the senior things. Probably more specifically, Scientologists generally think exercise is a good idea, right? Generally want to, in order to go in session, they have to eat and be well fed and well rested. So they do pay some attention to these things, but the senior idea is always the spiritual influence. And if you are hurt or injured or have an accident or something like that, it's your spirit that was out of sorts, not your body, and certainly no antibodies. You only got, bacterial or viral infections because of your spiritual state right? So, yeah, okay. I don't particularly like catfish. I don't particularly dislike. I don't think I've ever eaten catfish. Now that I think about it, I've had a lot of different kind of fish, but I don't think I've had catfish. Fish is okay. It's not the top of my list. I like red meat more, but I do. Yeah, fish is okay. What are some of the worst alternative medicine scams? Okay, boy, that's a tough one because there are thousands of them. The things that spring to mind for me as some of the worst are the ones that are the long-term scams. There's a lot of scams out there. I would say I would group most scams into relatively short-term things. It's a 1 or a 2 or a 3 and done. You know, they're trying to sell you some pill or some miracle cure, and most people, even desperate ones, can see pretty quickly it's not working for them. It was a scam. It was a this. It was a that, and they move on. But there are too many out there that convince people that of the long-term use of this thing, right? This oil or this essential oil or this kind of medication or droplets. You know, I'll tell you, probably one of the ones that really is so blatantly, horribly obvious, and yet so many people go for it, is homeopathy. This idea that you're going to take the essential or active ingredient in something and you're going to dilute it down so that its essence somehow permeates water or other liquid medium. I think it's usually water. And homeopathy is I swear to God, between that and Reiki, I can't decide which is more ridiculous. You know, there are people who, I'm not even kidding, I've seen it. I've watched the videos. I've seen the channels. There are people who will offer to do what I'm doing right now, to call you on a Zoom call and do this. Oh, I'm feeling your energies and I'm pulling out the psychic trauma, right? Like they will do what I just did. They make these hand motions on camera and get paid $100 a pop, $175, $200 a session to do this, right? Reiki by Zoom. Or they'll sell you, a vial of water and tell you it is a homeopathic remedy for your aches, pains, illnesses. There are charts and graphs and lists of things that homeopathy, it'll cure everything, right? I mean, it's very, very sad. So I think those are some of the worst that I know of. Yeah. Okay, let's carry on. Oh, colloidal silver. Yeah, colloidal silver. Yes, that's a horrible one. Yeah, don't want my skin to turn blue. Okay, Exion asks, would you like to be a dog or some other animal, at least for a while? How about trading places with another person? Oh, interesting question. Huh. Let's see. I don't want to be a dog. I don't want that. I love my dog. If anything, I've actually thought more about what if my dog was human or could talk, so I could actually get the real deal from him about what he thinks. I think that would be hilarious, because you have to infer so much from your dog just by the way they look at you and the tail and the body language and everything. And you can infer pretty well after a while. You get to know each other, but yeah. Anyway, as far as trading with another person, sure, there's a ton of people I'd be interested in trading with, but let me see. How do I put this? I used to want to be like, I thought it would be amazing to be like Elon Musk, right? Until I learned how, what an asshole he really is. But I thought his life was a pretty glorious life, but that was back when I believed his hagiography. His bullshit biography, right? It's not what hagiography means, but I'm just being silly today. but I bought into a lot of bullshit about Elon. So I thought he'd be a pretty cool, I thought he was maybe the closest thing to a real world Tony Stark, right? But he hasn't had his redemption arc. If he is, Elon's still in his evil phase. So yeah, I don't know if he's ever going to be redeemed. And really, it was about the position he was in, to be in a position where you could do something significant about space travel, about solving problems of transportation, about solving real big and very real problems that people suffer from. And the levels of complexity and bureaucracy that exist behind most of the unsolvable problems in our society is truly staggering. I think about some things I've learned recently about traffic and management of streets and city building, and it's not Sim City, because any more than a legal world is Law and Order. The Sim City, the video game, right? This is not how it really works. We simplify these things down, and I thought to be in a position where you have enough money and enough influence that you could actually get the meetings with the people you need to get to do the work that would actually change and streamline and improve and make things better for people for real. To be in that position, to be blessed, to have the money and influence to be able to do that, wow. That was why I wanted that body trade, if you will. It wasn't about Elon's personality or lifestyle, rather, right? I don't envy that man a single thing at this point. It's a horrible thing, but yeah. Anyway, I just thought that might be kind of yeah. Let's see if there's anybody else whose position I would like to trade. I guess Bill Gates is somebody who I think of as probably still in a position like that, who is doing that work. I don't know that I agree with his priorities, but I don't know what information he's got to hand. I don't study Bill Gates, right? He doesn't make himself quite as prominent as Elon Musk does, which says something about him, actually. I'm not a big fan. I don't like the way Gates came up and made his money, but I do respect the philanthropy, and I'd like to see more of that. Anyway, I don't know. I don't want to go too far on that one, but that's where my mind goes when you ask me about those things. X-Cyan, does the First Amendment protect propaganda? I'm sure there's a way it doesn't, but what is it? Well, no, it does. It does. Propaganda is, it's speech. At least a lot of propaganda is speech. Not all propaganda is speech. But it's communication. Because obviously there's a lot of imagery, motion picture, still picture, artwork, color work. There's a lot of things that influence us that are propaganda besides just words. But clearly words are a primary weapon. Free speech means in our society that the government is not going to interfere with what you have to say. The limits on that in terms of propaganda is when you are inciting rebellion, insurrection, treason, mutiny, whatever word you want to use, to communicate the concept of demonstrating that you not only don't like, if you think of, okay, I like to dumb this down to real simple ideas. And I know that the real world is very complicated. And when you get into the law and you get into First Amendment issues, there are rabbit holes and there are confounding and complicated questions when it comes to this. But I feel that when it comes to matters of treason, mutiny, this kind of thing, and propaganda, the limits seem fairly clear. The lines that we draw as to what is okay and not okay. Inciting open rebellion against this country while you're a citizen of this country or in this country is any of those words that you want to use, right? It's a betrayal of the group. It's actively working to destroy the group. And you have the right to say your opinion and voice how you feel about the group that you're in, the culture, government, nation. Again, whatever word you want to use. I'll just say the group. You have the right to say whatever you want and hold the opinions that you hold. But if you incite action that is destructive to the group you're in and you claim to be part of that group, then the rest of the group has a right to look at you and go, you're not here on the same terms as us. You're trying to not only decry what we're doing, but destroy it. You want this all burned to the ground. Well, this is our life, so we're not going to do that. And they should kick you out. That you shouldn't be in that group. You don't even want to be in that group, right? And all the way back in time, right? This was shunning. This was get the fuck out, right? There's the door. Don't want to hit you on the way out. So then people sometimes get nasty and evil and vicious and don't openly leave or don't openly say what they're about and start inciting things and riling people up and all of that, right? Insurgency and revolutionaries and all this crap, right, that goes on. Sometimes it's not crap. Sometimes when you have an authoritarian government, you need to do this. This is the push-pull of our existence. But getting back to First Amendment, sorry, I go off big sometimes. I was making all those points to say that when you're talking about things that drive action toward, incitement and rebellion and mutiny and all that, you got to be shut down. It's only in the group's best interest to do so, right? So that's where that has to get shut down. But there's a lot of freedom before you get there. Right? A lot of freedom. You're perfectly free to and should be free to disagree as much as you want. There's a very clear line, and I believe that this line has been sort of established or worked out in First Amendment law already. There's been a lot of discussion about this over the last couple centuries, and I from what I've read, there's been a lot of debate about this, and they always try to err on the side of giving people a little bit too much freedom, right? Like, hey, if we're misunderstanding you and you're not really inciting them, okay, all right, So if anything, it's been interpreted in a more lax way than more authoritarian governments would interpret the same laws. If you go to China or North Korea and try to do, pull some of the stuff people pull here, they'll literally kill you. Not hype, right? They'll kill you. So, or they'll just lock you up and throw away the key. Same difference. So we got a lot of freedom with that here, but you don't get to. Yeah, you don't get to murder. You don't get to create a riot, that kind of thing. I don't know. I think it gets to about there. And that's that. I mean, I'm a lay person. That's about as much as I can explain about it, I guess. Feel free to ask me anything more, though. I do like talking about that. Okay, X-Cyan asks, oh God, yeah, the Fluffy has comments. Sorry, before I get to this next question, Fluffy's commenting here about Elon suing advertisers, claiming the group illegally conspired to boycott advertising. That's the kind of thing that I laugh at. I mean, that's right, jerk, exactly. I mean, come on, suing your advertisers, the people who are literally paying you to have a platform. The dude is so performative. He is shamelessly performative. He's very, very, very much like L. Ron Hubbard. I always like to get that in there because it was a real big epiphany moment for me when I realized that, when I went, we went from fanboy to, learning, and then going, holy shit, Elon Musk has the same personality as L. Ron Hubbard. Not the same. He doesn't do exactly the same things. The personality is the same, though. It's really, once you see it, you can't unsee it. At least I think so. Okay. So let's get to your question next, Cyan. What were your favorite things in all the places you've lived or even stayed for a short while? Oh, what a great question. Okay. I loved, let's see. I'm just gonna kind of freestyle here. I loved the sun and freedom and mountains and oceans and open spaces of California. I loved the fact, and I still envy California for the fact that, and California is where I was born and raised. I envy them because with a few hours drive, you can go from snow-capped mountains to the lowest desert region in the geographical United States, in Death Valley, and from some of the cold to some of the hottest, to the ocean, to lakes, to rivers, to the forests, to farmland. It's all there. And it's within a few hours drive, no matter where you are in that state. California is amazing as a place to live. I don't live there though, because it's ungodly expensive, and the government there is a patchwork of motley ideas and failed liberal experiments and conservative crushing of immigration in the weak. And there's a lot of crap going on in California, and always has been. And I grew up there, and it was just it was a real mess. It's always been a mess as a government. But the state of California, the land, the people, well, not all the people, but a lot of the people are really cool. It's a great place, but it's a little nuts. I loved then contrasting that with Minnesota and the fact that there were 4 seasons. Because what I didn't get in California was weather. It was sort of a one-note wonder when it comes to the weather out there. Minnesota was wonderful because I got winter, like for real, like as real as it gets. Short of maybe going to the, Alaska or the North Pole or some Canada or some shit, right? I mean, winters in Minnesota were a real learning experience for me. And let's see. Yeah. And I loved all the lakes. I didn't love the mosquitoes. The state bird of Minnesota is a mosquito, and they grow them big out there. They're big enough to haul off babies. Yeah, they'll carry your kids off. Okay. And then as far as, I do want to say I didn't live, but in terms of stay for a little while, I stayed, we vacationed for a week in Barcelona, and that counts for me in terms of answering this, because I want to tell you guys that contrasting American living with Barcelona was really something. That the quality of the food in Europe, and especially in Spain, was night and day. And yeah, and the availability of the fresh food and the prices and I loved that. I really, really, really loved that. It's a little crowded in Barcelona for my taste, but it's a metropolis kind of city. So of course. Okay, I want to wrap this one up. So let's just see any other thing. I think that's it. Oh, one last thing. I'll say one last thing that just came to my mind. There's a pier in Santa Barbara that goes way out into the water, and there's like a wharf kind of pier thing, right? And there's I think there's a restaurant at the end of it, and a few things, but then it goes out even further, and there's just the water and the open ocean, right, at the end of this thing. And when I lived in Santa Barbara for many years, this spot, and I can still imagine it in my head, right, was one of my favorite spots on earth. Because I could just go down there at night, And I'm not a beach person. I don't like the beach. Well, okay, I like the beach, except I don't like sand and I don't like salt water. So, you know, it kind of blows the experience for me a little bit. But if I don't have to go in the water and I don't have to mess around with the sand, I love the beach because it's wide open spaces like nothing else is. And the ocean is right there. And it's got this, you know, and the smell and all the rest. And so being out on that pier at night with the moon, open night, stars, you know. I went down there so many times just to get my head clear and get some space, you know. That's probably my favorite spot in Santa Barbara. So I'll share that. Okay, let's carry on here. Charlie Saint Cardassism. Cardassism. Hey, Chris, why do you think the rumors about Tom Cruise reuniting with his daughter keep circulating, even though it seems unlikely to ever happen? Because people have hope. There's the reasons why Tom Cruise's stories about, and John Travolta's stories about coming out of Scientology continue to hit the stands is because people really hope that they will. That they'll end up being good people, that they want, that people want their idols to be everything they expect them to be. And they expect Tom Cruise to be how he presents, and he's not. Tom Cruise is not the man he presents on screen. He's an egotistical, narcissistic megalomaniac. He's a real power guy. And it's his way or the highway. And his way is the Scientology way. He's an OT8 Scientologist who believes in Xenu. He believes in the whole Satan thing. He believes that children are adults in little bodies. He believes Sea Org members owe him. You know, slave labor. That is who Tom Cruise really is. He doesn't have to be that person, but he is that person. And people don't want him to be that person because they want him to be the heroic figure he presents as, and he's been presenting as in his movies for decades. That's who they want him to be, but he's not. And so the real life of him keeps bumping up against these idyllic expectations, right? These idolic expectations, I should say, and they want a happy ending. Like, how could he abandon this beautiful daughter of his? How could he? Who does that? Tom Cruise does that. Scientologists do that. Cult members do that. People whose heads are so far up their own asses of belief and greatness and certainty that they're willing to literally give up their biological connections to family. Yeah, screw those people. I know what the truth is, and that's what is important. You know, this is the priority of some people and when they get into cults, and Tom Cruise is in a cult. So people want him out of there. This is what I believe drives it. I mean, you know, I can't point to some paper somewhere and say this is the reason, but this is my thinking on it. Otherwise, why would it be such a popular thing? It comes back again and again and again, to the point that Tom Cruise's team even leaks, yeah, he's probably leaving Scientology soon, you know, oh, evidence Tom Cruise is leaving, you know, because it always gens up interest in Tom Cruise before a movie of his comes out. They know, right? His own team knows. It's really, again, it's sort of under the heading of opposite world, but that's what I believe is the case as to why those rumors keep coming back around. And if nothing else, even if I'm wrong about all that in terms of the hope factor, the rumors keep coming out because it's a PR strategy to get people talking and buzzing about Tom Cruise. And this is a thing to buzz and talk about. Like I said, before a big property or movie or something is going to come out with his name attached to it. That's generally how I've seen it happen. Tony and I have talked about this for years now. You know, it seems to be a kind of a PR thing. All right. Okay. X-Scion. What can you learn by using Trump as an example? Well, at this point, you can learn an awful lot about how to overstay your welcome. Oh, the GOP is having massive regrets right now, as far as I can tell. I'm not at all on any kind of like on my back right now thinking this is all done and November is decided. I am not there at all. We got to fight. We have a very, very serious fight on our hands. In fact, the most serious ever. So I don't, but I want to be, kind of in good spirits and a little bit unserious about the whole thing too, because when I get serious I get kind of not fun. So okay, so what can we learn about Trump teaches us so many things. It's clearly narcissistic, clearly megalomaniacal in that he is questing and obsessing over power and influence. Trump is a really interesting, I believe at this point, and I'm not alone in this, that Trump is a scary example of dementia, in a public figure, in a cult figure. This is actually an interesting point. We don't ever talk about this, so let's talk about this as something Trump can teach us. Because he is a cult leader, right? And again, let me say, in case anybody's new to my channel here, watching this in the future, not everybody who votes for Trump or supports Donald Trump is a part of Trump's cult of personality. But there is a cult of personality that is built up around Donald Trump. People identify with him. People identify with his words, with his imagery. They semi or faux worship at the altar of Trump. This is what his rallies are all about. I tend to refer to them as the red hats, right? The cult members. There are financiers and government officials and all kinds of people, business people, who have who are sort of doing this, to put up with Trump because they want things from him or from the position he would hold as president. But then there's the cult members, right? And so what happens when a cult leader starts showing signs of dementia, starts showing signs of cognitive decline? Whether he's really got dementia or not is not my point. The point is that Donald Trump is clearly cognitively declining. He was already bad enough when he had his wits about him. But now he says and does things, and mainly says things, especially over the last month or two, that are showing a rapid decline. I believe this is also hastened or being sped up by the lack of popularity. He's losing support. And when narcissists, people who suffer from that condition, and I believe Trump is a poster child for narcissistic personality disorder, then when you see somebody like that start to lose their supply, their narcissistic supply, right? Their where they get their energy from, which is other people's admiration and loyalty and support, because they're incapable of ego being able to sustain themselves. They don't have enough of a conscientious ego to be able to live comfortably with themselves. They need other people admiring and loving and supporting and feeding them that energy. This is what's called narcissistic supply, and they literally live on it. And he's losing that. So, and then he's losing his mind. And so both of these things are acting in unison to like really make him say, there is no way that anybody can ever, unless you're in the cult, none of what Donald Trump has to say makes any sense anymore. You can kind of get where his head's sort of at, but the way he puts things and the way he describes things. I mean, when he was talking about that shark and the battery with the boat, I mean, dude, what are you fucking talking about? Right? And he keeps dropping Hannibal Lecter and the things that he says. The thing at the New York Economic Forum where he was asked about childcare. These quotes are tragic that this is being allowed to continue. The man is clearly losing his goddamn mind, and he keeps being put forward by the GOP as our man. This is our guy. This is our guy. I don't understand it when it's so obvious that he is not only not up for the job. He's not up for a job at McDonald's. He's not up for a job serving people, much less serving the nation or the world as the president. It's opposite world where you believe that this man is capable of that. So that's what I think is are some things he could teach us. Yeah, that's what I can say right now. Yeah, it's crazy. It really is crazy. Yeah, now there is a Republicans. You're right, Katie. There is a Republicans for Trump or for Harris. There are. I mean, Dick. Okay. What world? Let me just say this, and then we'll move on. Okay. I know some people hate it when I get into talking about politics, even though I hope it's obvious. I'm talking about cults here. What world is it where Dick Cheney is endorsing the Democratic nominee for president over the Republican nominee? What world is that? You know, where AOC and Dick Cheney agree. You know? Yeah, it's wild. It is wild. Okay, let's carry on. Joe DeSteppo. Okay, hey, Joe. Thanks for a very interesting podcast this week. I found it interesting your guest said fight, flight, freeze, or mating. So did I. Like you, I'd only heard fawn as the last one. Where's that from? I was hoping she would say. I brought that up because I wanted to get into that, but I don't know. Let's take a quick look and see. Fight, flight, freeze, mating. Let's just throw it into Google, see what we come up with. 4 F's. Evolution. What are the 4 F's of behavior? Yeah, it's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. According to this website, 4 basic... Oh, here it is. 4 basic animal instincts. Different article, Wikipedia. The 4 F's. Okay. Well, you know how we love Wikipedia here because it's a great resource because all of you can get to it. If I start citing more academic stuff, then maybe y'all won't have access to it. But let's go to Wikipedia. And it says, right from the get-go, actually, it's right up at top. In evolutionary psychology, people often speak of the 4 F's, which are said to be the 4 basic and most primal drives, or motivations or instincts, that animals, including humans, are evolutionarily adopted to have, follow, and achieve. And these are fighting, fleeing, feeding, and mating. Okay. And they did use a cruder term that does begin with the letter F to describe mating. And it was in fawn. Okay. So that's why it's still the 4 F's. Okay, the list appears to have been first introduced in the late 50s, early 60s by Carl Pribram, psychologist Carl H. Pribram, with the 4th entry in the list being known, such as sex, occasionally fornicating, although he himself did not use the term 4 F's. Okay, so it's interesting because when we talk about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, these are responses to like an attack or like what's going to happen if somebody comes at you or something. This suggests that these are actually not just reactionary, but that these 4 F's that they're describing here with mating are evolutionary drives, not reactions. So I'll differentiate the two answers that way, if it matters, and maybe it does. But that's what I could say about that. Just looking at it there, yeah, interesting. I wondered where she got that from. Okay, good, cool. Let's carry on. Xion, can you tell us something about probabilistic thinking? Probably. Let's make sure here. Probable. Okay, there we go. Value of probabilistic thinking. Trying to estimate using some tools of math and logic the likelihood of any specific outcome coming to pass. Okay, here's what I'm going to say about this. We are bad at it. We really suck at this. The reason we suck at it is because we're bad at numbers. This is something I'll comment on in answer to the question here today. Is because we're not aware of how bad we suck at this. It's a humbling experience for any of us, and I would challenge any of you watching this today or in the future to actually go do some work on this and see how bad you are at it. Because I was shocked at how bad I am at it. I had to learn about statistics for the master's program that I did. I had to learn that because I needed to learn what a p-value was and how statistics are calculated for studies. And I barely remember that stuff because I'm not doing academic studies. If I did, I'd dive back into that and learn about it again. But knowing, I came away with enough about that to learn interesting things, and I understand what p-values are. But what my point is that while doing that, you are really humbled when you learn how our ability to correctly estimate based on numbers we are given, how we translate that into actual probabilities versus what we think about as the probability. Oh, we are so bad. Right? We don't understand the difference between percentages versus percentile, for example. And IQ, as an example, is often is a number that reflects percentile, not percentage. When it's talked about, right? Like you're in the upper percentile, that's a different thing than you're in an up. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying. Or maybe you don't, but you should find out. It's interesting and again, humbling how we can misestimate. Okay. This is probably the best way I can think of to demonstrate my point. Let me just cut out all that other stuff and just say this. There was an effort made. Let me see if I can find this. With hamburgers. And in the 1980s, A&W, remember A&W? The root beer, right? A&W tried to compete with McDonald's Quarter Pounder by offering a 1/3 pound burger at the same price. But the marketing campaign was a failure. They launched a campaign called "Third is the Word" to aggressively market the larger burger with TV and radio spots. Many consumers mistakenly believed that 1/4 pound was larger than 1/3 pound. When asked why they should pay the same for 1/3 pound as 1/4 pound, they thought they were being overcharged. Because 1/4 has a 4 and 1/3 has a 3, and 4 is bigger than 3, see? So the 1/4 pounder is bigger than the 1/3 pounder. See? It's just common sense. See? You're an idiot. See? The marketing campaign failed. This isn't just one or two idiots. This is people. They don't get numbers. And so probabilistic thinking is something that you have to be really good at the math to do right. And hardly any of us are that good at the math, and so we get it wrong all the time. Like I said, it's humbling. I was blown away by how bad we are at it. I don't talk about it much, but yeah, it's a thing. So that's what I can say about probabilistic thinking today. I hope that doesn't come across too like horrible. It's just, yeah, it's the truth. It's the truth, and we overestimate our ability to think with and use numbers, especially when we're arguing with other people. And I have seen more than a couple examples over the years, and I'm not even very good at this, but I've seen more than a couple examples where both people arguing were completely wrong about the premise they were arguing about, having to do with numbers and statistics. They both didn't get it. So it's not even like, sometimes it's one versus the other. It's, sometimes it's so bad nobody knows what they're talking about in the argument, which is kind of hilarious when it happens. Okay, let's carry on. X-Cyan. Did you like looking up words in the dictionary when you were a kid? Would you have done it even if your parents didn't make you? Do you think it made you smarter? I did not enjoy looking up words in the dictionary until I was in Scientology for a little while. But and by in Scientology, I meant actually down at the org doing the classwork, right? So 15 years and up is when I really started getting my nose in a dictionary. But prior to that point, I had read thousands of books. I got to tell you, my nose was always in a book. Always when I was growing up. Sometimes more than one. I'd have a book in my pocket and I'd be walking around with the other one, right? So I'd finish this one, start the next one. I was voracious as a reader. I even opened up and would read straight out of the encyclopedia. So I wouldn't read dictionaries, but I'd read encyclopedias. I took after Encyclopedia Brown. I don't know if y'all remember that character that was created as a little children's mystery character, right? To sell children's stories on observational deduction and mystery writing, like figure out little tricky stories. And this character, Encyclopedia Brown, was this boy who was the smartest boy around in the neighborhood, who was always figure out these mysteries. And he apparently would read the encyclopedia from cover to cover, right? And so I thought, that's a good idea. And I actually was inspired to do it. And I read the encyclopedia all the time. So that was where I would get information. And of course, this was pre-internet. So if you wanted to know things about the world, this is how you learned it. You went down to the library, or you had an encyclopedia set at home, and you stuck your nose in it. And that's what you learned. And whatever information you had that, in the book, that's what you knew. Unless you went and did some other research on it. So I was really keen to learn about the world, and reading was the medium to do it. I was out on my bike a lot as a kid too. I wasn't just in the library, but I would roam around and all that. But I wasn't a camping kid. I was in the Boy Scouts, but I didn't really like it that much. I wasn't an outdoors, throw my body around, jumping off trees and roofs and cycling my, being a jackass with my bicycle and stuff. I didn't do any of that stuff. I was a pretty cautious kid. Anyway, that was kind of my experience as a kid with all that. Okay. And yes, I do think it made me smarter. Absolutely, I do. Yeah. Because I knew more things, right? Just knew more about the world. And it was the only way I could see that I could have any power in the world, if I'm being honest, because my body was small and runty, and I was a year behind school and everybody else because I started a year ahead of everybody else because of my age. My birthday is in December. And so they enrolled me a year earlier than maybe they should have. And this is a common problem. I wasn't alone in this. And so I was always trying to compensate for that going through school. And it was a fight I didn't even know I was fighting. I didn't realize that I had been enrolled in school a year earlier or earlier than everybody else. Didn't even know that. I didn't learn that until a couple years ago. All right. Ooh, you guys ask fun questions. Which ancient myth is the trippiest? Anthony Spurgeon asks. Ooh, okay. I think I'm immediately going to the Greek mythos and stuff. I used to read these things in the library all day. Oh, I love this stuff, but I can't remember any of it, of course. Let's see here. Trippiest. This is where my mind goes, so that's why I'm sort of thinking in that area right now. But let's see. Okay. No, I'm not going to answer with the ancient astronauts thing. That's a trippy one. That's one that really trips me out. And I've been hearing about it since the 70s, the whole ancient astronauts, we have star seed theory, right? But it's not really an ancient myth. It's a modern myth that's been laid over ancient myths. So I won't skip out and answer it that way. Although I do think that's the sort of trippiest thing connected with all this stuff, that somehow, you know, the what was it, Andre Sitchin or something, the seventh planet and all this, you know, the 11th planet or something. Anyway, that starseed stuff was pretty trippy stuff. Incredibly stupid. I mean, it's as dumb as Xenu, but it's still trippy. But in terms of ancient myth, I was just thinking, I'm sorry, my mind's a little all over, but there was this one, I think it was Hindu. They got some trippy stuff in Hinduism. At least the little tiny bit that I've been exposed to. It's not like I've gone and read all the, you know, the Vedas or something. I've dived into them a couple times, but it's not, you know, there's a lot there. Hubbard referenced them all the time. That's the familiarity I have with them. But there was some trippy creation stories. There was something with Shiva, the multi-armed goddess of death. Personifies a lot of things, but death being one of them. Destroyer of worlds, that kind of thing. There was something connected with that grossed me out. So much that I didn't want to have anything to do with it anymore. It was something really disgusting having to do with a creation myth and Shiva. I'm sorry, I can't. Let me see if I can find it really fast. Sorry, guys. But since I'm sitting here with my computer... creation from subtle to gross. Yeah, I'm not going to spend a long time looking at this. Okay, I don't want to waste y'all's time here, but not seeing it right away. What is this? Prison house? Nah, I can't. Sorry, I'm totally bombing on this answer. Let's move on. Sorry. All right. David Miscavige's sentient overgrown toenail. Wow. If you make yourself go into trance states outside of a cult group as a form of stress control, is that harmful? No, it is. There's a lot to what you do with it. A trance state is a perfectly normal, organic place to be. Your brain doesn't do it for no reason at all. Your body doesn't do it for no reason at all. It's a concentrated focus, and it's a way to tune out other things, to really focus that attention on something. A hyper focus is a thing. It can be a superpower at times. Context is everything for this, everything for it. Trance is something that is used by ethical hypnotherapists all the time to help people in very ethical, above the board, and very consensual ways. Trance is used by unethical practitioners and cult leaders and predators to get you to do things or agree to things without consent or informed consent. And that's the difference. The trance state is a neutral thing. It's a condition of your body. It's like being hungry or being tired or being full or being well rested. These are different states that your body is in depending on conditions. And a trance state is no different than that. So no, I don't want people thinking that a trance state is a boogeyman place, or that it is that the harm is putting people in a trance. It's not. Again, children go into trances in classrooms. We wouldn't even want to prevent that. It's a way of a brain kind of going into open learn mode in certain contexts. In other contexts, no, we don't want the brain open up and receiving any input you're giving it. uncritically. Because that's kind of what trance is about, is it's kind of just uncritically receiving information. Okay, so there you go. Let's carry on. Good question. Thank you for asking me that. I've never had to clarify that before, so I appreciate that. No name in NW. A couple of weeks ago, there were some efforts from Aaron of SPTV to extend somewhat of an olive branch towards the incredible negativity. Can you comment on the extent of any follow-up from this? Okay. There hasn't been any follow-up in my direction. And I don't really have anything else to say about that, actually. I don't think I want to bring that back in here. Let's move on. Yeah. There has been no effort on the part of nobody behind the scenes to reach out to me in any way about anything when it comes to any of this from that camp. None. So I'm going to move right along. John O'Nolan. About the TRs, couldn't practicing the bull bait one with a friend make you more resilient to bullies? Okay. Here's the problem with TR0 bull bait. Here's a big problem, not the problem. There are many problems. The TRs could be thought of, TR0, staring at somebody for hours, not flinching, not avoiding, right? Confronting them, could be thought of as an exercise in resiliency. But I don't really think about it that way. And I'll tell you why. Having done them for thousands, well, not thousands of hours, but hundreds, I've definitely done hundreds of hours of TR0. And TR0 bull bait specifically. So I think I can speak from some experience as to what it does to you. And I'm not the be-all, end-all of experience when it comes to TRs. Everybody's different and they have their own experiences. So my experience is that it created a false persona, a kind of faux me who I could put in my place. Instead of having to listen or engage with or be present for communications coming my way, I learned by training to create a false facade, a false sort of front that I could wear like a mask. And it wasn't me. I would have to go into TR's mode to deal with somebody yelling in my face or ripping my face off, as they would say in Scientology, or confronting someone in, the real world, right? Outside of Scientology even. You adapt to that conflict or problem, I respond to that conflict or problem by putting on this mask. And it was a false front, a veneer. And I knew that's what I was doing. That's what I was trained to do by the TRs. And in hindsight, and I now have 10 years, 11 years of hindsight of this to look back on the recovery process from it, and how do I deal with conflict or adversarial situations now. Well, it's been an interesting journey learning how to do that, because I eschew the TRs and I gave up the false veneer. So I don't do that. I don't stand there and just sort of take it. Okay, I'm going to go into mannequin mode now. I'm being yelled at. I'm having somebody in my face, right? Okay. Mannequin mode, TR's mode, if you will, isn't a thinking place. It's a stonewalling kind of thing. At least it was for me. I don't see how you can do the TRs the way they're taught in Scientology. And I taught them to a lot of people over the years. I was a TR supervisor for a period, and it was always part of my supervision duties for years to supervise TRs on all kinds of courses. I don't know how you could learn the TRs the way they're written and then be a mindful, present person in that moment of whatever it is, that, you know, conflict or problems or issues. It shuts down your thinking. It doesn't help you think. That was my experience of it. Right? Because I would be putting so much effort in, and here's why. I was putting so much effort into staying composed and staying at this mask on and presenting the way I was supposed to present that I wasn't present as a person for the communication, if that makes any sense. I hope it does. It's a vastly different thing to not be putting all that energy into that and just be there and listen to the person and react and be human, you know, without all that you have to kind of put there. And there are some Scientologists even who kind of interestingly convinced themselves that they were doing that they weren't tensing up and being, you know, and doing this false veneer thing, but they were. Even when they told themselves they weren't, they were. I could see it, you know, especially in hindsight. So I don't think it's a good idea to do that, right? Not TRs. There could be other ways of exposing yourself to uncomfortable or things that make you, you know, you react or trigger, right? There's a lot of different ways of exposing yourself or dealing with triggering behavior without having to do TRs. I would never recommend TRs as resiliency training. I wouldn't do that. I don't think that'd be a good idea. Yeah, I can't think of that being a good idea. Okay, there you go. Probably over-answered the shit out of that, but there you go. Okay, let's carry on here. Can colloidal silver turn you into a Smurf? Well, it'll turn you blue. So I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I guess all those Smurfs I've been talking about, maybe those are just people with colloidal silver. Anyway, yeah. Woo. Benson. Okay. Hey, what if I wanted to be you, but you didn't want to be me? Oh. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Oh. David Miscavige's Sentient Overgrown Toenail. Would you read my book of my post-cult beliefs? What, from your toenail? No, I'm not. I don't think I'm interested in your toenail's beliefs. Thank you for offering, though. Xion asked for your opinions about microdosing, and I am also curious. Okay, great. I am curious about microdosing's effectiveness. I understand that there are some limited studies on this. I'd like to see a lot more. I think it has potential. I think that there is a lot of untapped potential in the in treatment modalities that utilize psychedelics or hallucinogenics. I believe that there's help available for people who have mental health issues down those roads. However, I don't think it is yet figured out exactly how to do that. This is still, I mean, talk about infancy. We're in fetus days. I mean, we're, you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to be crude, but like that baby hasn't even been born yet. Like we're still very early in research on psychedelics for lots of obvious reasons, right? One, we're just barely making this stuff legal. Government regulations are just barely starting to be let go a little bit. And you can't do credible research without those government restrictions and bullshit nonsense laws getting the hell off the books. And we don't need laws against hallucinogenics. I'm telling you, the government and the puritanical bullshit racism behind these laws. You people, I don't mean to be so crude. Yeah, I mean, people just would not believe the real story behind this crap. There is no science there, you know, behind the illegalization of marijuana and the psychedelics and stuff, LSD. Just the biggest disservices to mental health and mankind in general, making these things illegal. It's horrible. So microdosing, I believe, has potential. And I think it needs a lot of research to prove that. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, microdose away, unregulated and, you know, uncontrolled and call that therapy. Don't do that. I'm just saying there's a lot of potential there, and I can't wait for it to be realized, and let's see what happens. And work with, if you are interested in microdosing, then I would highly recommend you find reputable, ethical psychiatrists or therapists who work with that. Do not work with people who are running a blog and doing meetups, you know, and paying $200 for a weekend retreat. You know, Radical Honesty does that here in town. They do these psychedelic retreats, and they'll charge you $300-400 for therapy using psychedelics by unregulated, unlicensed people who have no clue what they're doing. So I don't want to see any of that. That's not what I'm promoting at all, and I want to be super clear about that. That's where my head's at on it right now. There you go. Okay. Paula Pecorini, do you think multiculturalism has failed, or does it still have a future? How Scientology relates to multiculture in its organization? Okay. Multiculturalism. Do I think it has failed? Well, let's define our terms, because I want to be clear about that. Multiculturalism, according to Google, is the idea that different cultures, races, and ethnicities should be recognized and included in a society, especially those of minority groups. It's characterized by acceptance, integration, and policies. The host country's rules and policies are conducive to developing a peaceful, culturally diverse state. Multiculturalism can be applied to societies, organizations, and educational institutions. For example, New York City is considered a salad bowl society because of its many unique ethnic communities, such as Chinatown, Little India, and Little Odessa. Okay. So do I think it's failed? No. I don't think multiculturalism has failed according to that idea. Does it still have a future? Well, clearly it does, only because we live in a multicultural society. We're America. We're the melting pot. We're the OG of multiculturalism, right? Now, if there's this idea in here of recognizing within this salad bowl, if you will, this concept of individual cultures and their identities or branding or whatever, right? Whatever words you want to use to describe the values and dress and language and customs and holidays and all the things that come from that culture, and seeing that mix into a more homogenous society where these differences are recognized and even celebrated, I don't think that's failed at all. I think that that we are always going to have a celebration of our differences, and within that world where those celebrations happen, there will be a group of people percentage of people in any of these groups or cultures who are going to be the assholes, right? The trolls, the jerks, the people who don't want to mix, the people who don't want to get along, the people who, you know, are antisocial. There's always some antisocials, and they're always going to have shit to say. But I don't think that their input means that there's been a failure of the attitude or openness or the engagement that multiculturalism offers. You know, I think we celebrate and win as a species when we celebrate our differences and our similarities. And we recognize that the majority of things we have in common are similarities, right? The majority of our traits are common. That there are very, 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 very few things that make us different from one another if you really boil it down. But we so hyper focus on those differences to the detriment of recognizing our similarities. And multiculturalism is an effort to recognize differences and yet be in a single culture. And that's hard. That's a challenge because some people aren't up to doing that. Their lizard brain just takes over, you know, for lack of a better word. And they act like monsters. They act like animals. They act like uncultured people who, you know, want to create division and conflict and all of that. We're always going to have to deal with that. But the existence of that doesn't mean that society has failed. And so therefore, I don't think the resistance to or pushback against multicultural ideas, it makes it a failure. Yeah, I'll shut up now. Let's carry on. Joe DeCeppo, when you first blew from the Sea Org and crashed, how long did you sleep after all those years of sleep deprivation? That's a great question. I slept for about a day and a half, if I remember right. It was long. I crashed, no, not a day and a half. Let's see, how long was it? Oh no, it kind of was. I took off, I believe it was a Sunday night. I think it was a Sunday. If I remember, okay, here's what I remember about this. One night in the Sea Org, I was particularly stressed. This was, let's see, let's find out exactly when. The Ideal Org of San Francisco had just opened. November 29th, 2003. So everybody came back from that to the CLO. I was left in the CLO and I was basically manning a lot of posts by myself. And I was going a little bit nuts with all the pressure. There was more pressure on my head during about a 2-month period of October, November. It was, what was it, August, September? Like September, October, November of 2003 was probably the most stressful time I had in the Sea Org. Yeah, it was daily. I felt I was going psychotic. I actually did think I was going nuts. So when everybody came back and I kind of started to chill a little bit, I got an order that set me off one night, and I just got up and walked out the back door. And I walked from the Big Blue complex to downtown LA, and then from there to Pasadena. And somewhere in there, on the way to Pasadena, I got on a bus at some point along the line, around 6 or 7 in the morning. I had been walking all night. Like I left at midnight, I think. It was just after midnight, 11:45 to midnight. I got up and walked out the back door. So just wandering all over the place for hours and then ending up in Pasadena. And I crashed at a hotel. I had gotten all the money I had in the world out of an ATM when I was in downtown LA. And I went down there, got the money, and then went in the opposite direction to throw them off because I thought they might end up learning that I had gone to my ATM and taken that money out, which they did. So when I went to Pasadena and crashed in a hotel, I arrived there around 9 a.m., 8 a.m., 8 to 9, somewhere in there. And I slept. I woke up the next day. Yeah, what was it? 9. I woke up that night around 9:30, 10 o'clock. So I slept for like 12, 13 hours. And then I went back to sleep and got another 8 hours, something like that. Because then the next day, I guess it was Tuesday at this point, is when I got up and started walking around the city and stuff, the town. So yeah, so that's my best recall on the timing of all that. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Hey, Jono. Do I practice any martial art? I do not. No, I've never formally practiced any martial arts. I've tried. I went to 2 different Aikido schools, and my ADHD brain, I now know, I mean, looking back on it, I couldn't assimilate or deal with how they were trying to teach me Aikido. I hated it. I hated it right from the get-go. It was this kind of immersive, you know, bow and here's the mat, and you have to bow here and bow there and do this and do that, and it was all this form and ceremony and ritualistic kind of behavior. And if there was one thing I ain't interested at all in, you know, it's all that. I'm not going to a martial arts class to immerse myself in the culture of, you know, an Asian country. I'm going there to learn a skill set, and they didn't teach me anything like within the first couple hours, and I was very frustrated by it. So I passed. Yeah. Old Bay. I'm a care worker by profession, caring for people with dementia, and I see clear signs of Donald Trump having dementia. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Okay, ex-Cyan. If someone tells you what you know to be a wives' tale, should you tell them it's not true and why, or let it go because you don't want to upset their world? You know, thanks, Joe. I'm going to say it's going to depend on context. As I always do, you know, there's no binaries, right? Here's my judgment point on this question is it going to be, what's the effect going to be? Is it going to be more of a bother and more of a problem to try to deal with this person, and are they just going to reject it anyway? Or is it going to be a teaching moment, a learnable moment, right? Are we going to actually get something out of this? And if you feel from past experience that it's just going to be a round-robin nonsense fest, then skip it. You know, but if you think the person really needs it, or it's a really helpful thing to do, or for whatever reason this needs debunking because there's something important on the line, you know, if this was a medical issue or a medicine issue or something where, you know, real harm was possible as a result of believing the wives' tale, then you have a more vested interest in getting it across to the person because, you know, you don't want them to hurt themselves or hurt other people. Otherwise, you know, skip it. Okay. Young Matador, what's your opinion on prohibition in the USA? A reasonable response to alcoholism or way over the top? Great question. I happen to know a little bit more than your average bear about this because of some museum things I went to, some prohibition stuff. I learned all about it. It was fucking fascinating. The whole time period, the groups that came together, the women's movements and church movements, and yet also, was it the KKK? There was some group that was really heavily promoting prohibition. That was like a group you would not imagine would be doing that. It was a real meeting of a lot of different minds putting that whole thing together, and what a disaster it was. Wow, what a disaster. It went on for years. Organized crime went absolutely crazy with it. There was a lot of money made by a lot of people during those years. And a real interesting object lesson in trying to regulate sin. Alcohol had a lot more prominent role in society back in the early 1900s than it does now. Prohibition had a long-term effect of really showing people how damaging and destructive alcohol could be. But look at where we're at now. It's still the most misused and abused drug I'm aware of. And it is way more harmful, statistically speaking, per capita, breaking it down per damage, per person. Alcohol is far more damaging and destructive to people's personal lives, relationships, job life, and society than marijuana has ever been. By far. The statistics on this one are stunning. So, was prohibition a bad idea, or was it way over the top? It really all depends on how you think about people. I don't want to skip out on answering this, but I want to give you all my thoughts on it because it's a complicated issue. And when you talk about prohibition with a capital P, you're talking about alcohol, but it's symbolic of trying to control people's needs and desires with binary regulation. It simply is forbidden. There is no circumstance ever where this is ever going to be okay. Drinking alcohol in this case, right? It's prohibited. That alone has a very interesting psychological effect on groups of people. It makes them want it more. It also has other interesting psychological effects. There are many, many, many of them. At a societal level, the crime and the incentivization of crime, the morality issues, the guilt, the self-guilt, all the things that it creates with people. There's a lot of levels of crazy that go on when you do something like this. So I don't think overall it was a good idea. I think it was a very bad idea. Educating people about the ills of something is not hard to do, but it's a time-consuming thing. You cannot ever expect immediate results. Societal change is incremental and slow. Slow, 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 so slow. We're never, ever satisfied within one lifetime by the amount of change that when we're trying to implement societal change. So slow. It's taken us generations, for example, to even codify laws around civil rights for minorities, for blacks, right? For all minorities, really. Why did it take that long? Incremental change. People are slow. It's generational change because there are groups of people who will refuse to change no matter what you do. And they have to die off. And then the next generation can be more open to the change. Racism is like that. Sexism, misogyny is like that in our culture right now. There's a lot of things that are changing, and it's slow change. Prohibition was an example of trying to introduce immediate change and failing miserably as a result, because that's not how people are. That's kind of my bigger picture view of it. It was too much too fast. And people railed against it, pushed back against it hard. People died as a result. Crimes were committed as a result. Lives were ruined as a result. And they ended up undoing the whole thing because it was so destructive. You can't do it like that, right? You can't. Not if you want everybody to get along in the process. Okay. Oh, George, no, your question wasn't bad. I don't know if I got your question, though, George. Sorry, I just saw a comment there about... got distracted. Let's get Miss Tara Green's questions. Sorry, guys, I get distracted. Do you have a P.O. box or similar where people can send you fan mail? I do not have a P.O. box. I had one for a brief period, but I never got any fan mail, so I stopped paying for it. So I just have my personal address, and if you email me, I'll send it to you. I don't have a big thing on it. Just email me at askchrisshelton@gmail.com or otherwise, and let's get in touch, and we can figure it out that way. I don't have enough people trying to send me stuff that it's that big of a thing. Okay, Stuart Gorman. What are good ways to teach people that critical thinking is fun? How do you link honest investigation of cognitive dissonance so it is its own reward, thereby fulfilling one or more emotional needs? Great question. And this is exactly the kind of thing that that Melanie works on. And this is why I love talking to her about it, because her work is engaging as an educator. Now, she's a college level educator, and there are other people who are trying to do this same thing with grade school children, with high school children, right, with elementary. They are really working on this. There are efforts out there. The best way to do this, or good ways to do this, is with examples, with interaction, with role play, with involvement, and with very, very real examples, real world stuff, not abstract academic. If a train's going 70 miles an hour down a track, and this other car is going the opposite direction, that's not the kind, real stuff that people engage with. Trolley problem thinking is really interesting in college philosophy and ethics classes, but it doesn't, it's interesting, but it's not really what sixth graders need. How could they deal with the the vagaries of bullying and social media and interactions with illogical nonsense that they're being fed by social media and by news media. And real examples of that are a dime a dozen. They're all over the place. And I think that's how to best teach children, is with real life stuff. Yeah. And then make it fun, make it funny examples, make it interesting examples, make it things that are intriguing to those age groups as they go on up the line. And that'll change over time. Little kids, for example, really love animals, and pets and things, right? Do critical thinking exercises around that. Versus you get a little older, what's the more general thing that people are more interested in as they get more social, is group stuff and social things. And okay, let's come up with some interesting or fun examples in that direction. And I don't know, I'm not a formally trained educator. I'm just doing the best I can with this stuff. But I think that even for adults, they need something they can sink their teeth into, something that's useful for them. If they can't see it as useful, they're not going to bother to pay attention or learn it. Let's see. So how do we do that? See, there's two approaches to this. Let me say this. Let me throw this out there. It seems to me there's two sort of ways you can go about this. I think that there are people like me, others, who are absolutely intrigued by how they get things wrong in the world and want to learn more and be better at thinking. But there's an awful lot of people who haven't hit a wall in their life where they were convinced or shown how wrong they can be. They write it off. They explain it away. They have problems and issues in their life. They hit walls, but they explain it away to themselves. They don't hit a rock bottom. They don't realize they're the problem. They believe, as they go through life, that they're fine and everybody else is the problem. And you can't teach somebody like that the same way you teach somebody who has hit bottom. It's a different approach. And I don't know that that is particularly acknowledged out there. It's understood as a problem. There's a lot of people in the critical thinking world, I've talked to Melanie about it, I've talked to other people about it, who recognize that there are two types of people. You can categorize, you can shift everybody, you could split the entire world into people who understand that they're kind of the problem, that the reason they run into issues and problems with other people is kind of, it's more on them than it is other people. It's their lack of understanding or dealing with other people. And then there's people who think they're perfect and it's everybody else who's the problem. And they really do think that. You try to teach them, you can't teach them. They won't learn because they don't think that they have anything to learn. That's the challenging one. I think those are the people who are most challenging to try to teach critical thinking to, because the only reason why they learn about critical thinking is to make other people wrong, to use it as a weapon against other people rather than as a way of reflecting on their own thinking and their own behavior as a result of their thinking. That is what you have to break in the person. I hate that word, but I don't know what other word to use to get them to see and make the connection between this information and them. And until we fail and hit our face hard and are bloodied by it, and then have a mirror put on our face, you're the one who went 50 miles an hour into the brick wall, idiot, right? Until that happens and you have that epiphanal sort of moment, right? It's really hard to teach this stuff. My thinking. Maybe there is other ways of teaching it or getting through that mindset that I don't know anything about. I am challenged by it. Personally, as somebody who tries to educate people, I recognize that problem and I am challenged by it. I don't have a solution to it that readily comes to mind as, how do you overcome that? I'm really not sure. When I run into people like that, I have failed. I haven't succeeded. It's been hard. Most of the people that I consult with or that I deal with aren't like that. They come out of a cult or they realize that they were in a bad situation because they hit rock bottom. Or they hit rock bottom shortly after coming out or getting kicked out. And they realize, oh my God, right? I have really failed myself here. I did not do my due diligence. I did not find out more. I could have learned, they realize that they could have done something different. But it feels like most people. I won't insist it's most people, but it feels like it's most people who don't have any recognition of that at all. They go through their life as though, like I said, everyone else is the problem and they're fine. And they're not. It's not that way. So I've been very, very challenged by that myself. Yeah, that's what I got. Oh, there's George's question. Okay. George Smiley, because of the tone scan, Scientologists are sensitive to any signs of covert hostility, but are they alert to Scientologists acting uptone, happy when they are actually miserable? Oh, okay. The tone scale you're referring to. Are sensitive to any signs of covert hostility. Okay. Just thinking here for a second about, yes. Sweetness and light. There's a term in Scientology for someone who is so, there's sort of this glazed, this sort of look, that happy, kind of mystical, sort of cloudy, they're not all there kind of thing. That's called sweetness and light. And I think there's even a picture in the technical dictionary of an angel or something, right, describing this. This is somebody who would never do anything wrong to anybody ever kind of person. Somebody who's so all the time, right? It's this very fake, syrupy, weird state. I've seen Scientologists in it. I've seen people try to maintain it as a life state, that they're always supposed to be that way. I saw someone who was OT8 try to be that way all the time. I saw another person who was very, very low on the bridge, who thought this was how to present, right? It's always, I'm so happy to be here all the time. It's so amazing here. I love it. Scientology is great, right? And their life, you go to their house, you learn about their life. It's a mess, literally a mess, like practically a hoarder house. I mean, I've seen some bad stuff. Yeah. So, and yes, some groups do strive for that, very much so. But it's a fake, faux thing, and people who are actually in touch with their emotions and aren't afraid of them don't do that. You know, it's people who are afraid of their emotions who do that. And yeah, I saw a lot of people in Scientology who would do that over the years. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. They don't acknowledge it very often. It doesn't come up a lot in terms of how they are dealt with to change that behavior. Thiety-weety is the other term for this in Scientology. You're being thiety-weety. Like it's fake. It's like too much. You know, Sea Org members have a very low tolerance for this. No one in the Sea Org is interested in thiety-weety, sweetness and light bullshit. If you're that way in the Sea Org, you're going to be broken of that shit real fast. Real fast. No one wants to deal with that in the Sea Org. They are the opposite. They're sort of the no bullshit club when it comes to feelings, you know. So it's interesting because we would have contempt within the Sea Org culture. We would hold people like that in contempt. We hated people who were all sweetness and light and because we knew how fake it was. We were like, this person is just not even there. So even in the Scientology world, that can be a very, very bad thing to be thiety-weety, you know. Yeah, it's interesting. Good question. Good question on that one. Okay, so, oh shit, 3 o'clock. I'm over time. Bet Tony's going to be a little upset with me now. Okay. Nope, hasn't messaged me yet. Okay, good. I'm still not in too much trouble. Okay, so we're going to have to wrap up now. We've been at it for almost 2 hours. This has been fun. Answering y'all's questions. I hope I did better this time in terms of slowing it down a little bit and trying to be a little bit more thoughtful. The reason I was kind of thinking that way is in reviewing my last few Q&As, I have misunderstood a couple of questions that people have asked me, I think, or answered slightly differently than I think what was wanted. I noted that myself. Nobody was complaining to me. I didn't get any nasty emails or anything. I just was sort of self-correcting on this, and I wanted to do a slightly better job with it, so I hope I did today. Okay, so there we go. I will see you guys soon. Catch the Monday show with Tony tomorrow, and we'll see what happens during the week here this week. I don't have any plans for any live streams during the week. I did want to put in a plug for you guys. Last week, I plugged everything at the beginning of the show. I didn't do any plugs this week. Let me end by saying that again, if you all need any help, consultation, assistance, support, you want to contact me directly, I am here for you. I love working with people. I really do, especially, the vast majority of the time I feel I can be quite helpful for people. And they seem to say that too. So if you need any assistance with post-cult recovery, with cult education or matters or coercion or anything having to do with that, somebody who's in a coercive situation, you don't know what to do, what to say, how to deal with it. Maybe it's already messed up. You can contact me. Maybe we can figure it out. All right, there you go. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.